In this problem, we're asked to find the zeros of a cubic function. So anytime we want to find zeros of a function, we know we want to get it into factored form. So we need to figure out how we're going to factor this cubic to start. Now with a cubic, it's not as easy as a quadratic, and so to start, I'm going to look at the graph. So I have my function typed in y1. I had to adjust my window a little bit, but I'm going to look at the graph to see if there are any exact zeros that would help me factor. And so you can see right here that x equals -3 is a 0. And so we already know one real zero, and how this helps us the most is that that tells me that x plus 3 is a factor. So that tells me that what's remaining here is going to be a quadratic, and I have 2 more zeros that I need to find since this is a cubic, and we'll always have 3 zeros. This graph also tells us that since it doesn't touch the x-axis again, that my other 2 zeros are going to be non-real. They're going to be complex numbers. And so to find our remaining factor, we're going to have to divide our cubic by our known factor. And so since we're dividing, or since this is a linear term, I know that I can use synthetic division. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to plug in -3 into my function, and I'm going to use the coefficients a 1, a -4, a -3, positive 54. Bring down the 1, multiply it by -3, add it to the -4, and do that process over again. -7 times -3 is positive 21. Added to a -3 is going to give us a positive 18. Multiply that by a -3. That'll give us a -54. Added to 54 will give us a 0. This should be a 0 since -3 is a factor. Our remainder should be 0. We shouldn't have anything left. What's remaining then is our quadratic. And so it will be a 1x squared, a -7x, and a positive 18. So from here I know 1 0, but to find the other 2 I have this quadratic. Since it's unreal solutions, that tells me that I'm probably not going to be able to factor this guy, and so we're going to use the quadratic formula to find our 2 complex numbers. So we'll have x equals -b, which is already a -7, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times 1 times 18, all divided by 2 times 1. From here, we'll start to simplify. We'll get a positive 7 plus or minus 49, and this will end up giving us a 72. So we can see that this is why we're going to end up with complex numbers. 49 minus 72 will give us a negative underneath the radical, all divided by 2. From here, we do want to simplify further into a plus bi form, so we will get 7 plus or minus the square root of -23 over 2. I can take an I out of that radical and leave that as the square root of 23i all over 2. And then our last step to get it into our complex number form is to take the 7 divided by 2 plus or minus the square root of 23 divided by 2i. So we have 2 unreal zeros and then our 1 real zero. So we know that we found all 3 for the cubic.